Welcome to Calvary Temple Church, here in the heart of downtown Winnipeg. Calvary Temple is people, people of all generations and all nations. Stay tuned for a message of hope and encouragement.
This morning it's about culturally relevant or contextually real. The crisis of relevance without reality. Mark 1:22 says this, "The people were amazed at his teaching, for he taught with real authority, quite unlike the teachers of religious law." You see, religious teachers in the times of Jesus and even today can get caught up in trying to be relevant rather than truthful. How many YouTube hits am I going to get? How many Facebook shares and likes? You see, but for Jesus, it wasn't about that. It wasn't about public opinion. Jesus was concerned about sharing the truth, about showing people the truth about the love of his Father and being real within the context in which he was placed. The danger of hypocrisy, it's not you. As a Christian church, we are often condemned of being hypocrites, that what we do from Monday to Saturday doesn't line up with the way we act and behave and talk on Sunday. And so as we look to what does hypocrite actually mean, it goes back to the Greek actors who would hold face masks up in front of their own faces to take on a different persona, a different character. They were called hypocrites because they weren't being truthful to who they were. As Christians, we need to take off the masks. We need to be real with people. You see, it isn't helpful for people to think that we are perfect as Christians when we're actually very far from it. Rather, when we're real with people, we're able to point them to Jesus. It's not about me and my behavior that makes me a Christian. Rather, it's about Jesus and his behavior and his shed blood that extends grace to me. When we try to be relevant without being real, we become the hypocrites. Tone deafness. You just don't get it. They aren't striking the right chord. When we think of tone deaf, we think of musicians. And if you've ever sat beside me in a service singing along, you'll quickly understand that it can be very hard to sing on tune when the person beside you is a little off in key and pitch. You see, in our world today, public figures often struggle to try to hit the right tone in the public eye because they're more concerned about singing loudly than they are about singing in the right tune. Justin Trudeau went on a trip to India with his family. And as they toured the different sites of India, they dressed up in all these traditional outfits and costumes. And the problem is they were mocked for it because it wasn't real or authentic. Even the Indian press said it was too Indian, even for an Indian. Hear me. I'm not trying to disparage our Prime Minister. He has an unbelievable task of trying to lead our country. But it is critical for us to understand the importance of being in tune to the world around us. His attempt to be relevant came up short. In an attempt to be relevant, he missed the mark and seemed tone deaf to the culture around him. Conversely, we see Jesus always hits the right note. He always comes in tune. Many people in his day tried to trick him or trap him into saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing. But Jesus always hits the right note. In Matthew 12, we see that Jesus is the Lord of the Sabbath. At that time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry. They began to pick some heads of grain and eat them. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to him, "Look, your disciples are doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath." He answered, "Haven't you read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He entered the house of God, and his companions ate the consecrated bread, which was not lawful for them to do, but only for the priests. Or haven't you read in the law that the priests on Sabbath duty in the temple desecrate the Sabbath, and yet are innocent? I tell you that something greater than the temple is here. If you had known what these words mean, I desire mercy, not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the innocent. For the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. I don't know what it's like for you, but if someone attacks me, I want to defend myself. I get my back up and I fire right back at them. But Jesus didn't do that. Jesus didn't get in an argument about what was right or wrong. Jesus disarmed the attack by simply sharing the truth. He hits the right note. A lack of authenticity, it doesn't ring true. When you're chasing relevance instead of authenticity, it will never ring true. Excuse me. You see, I was born in 1982. I'm the first year of what they would call the millennial generation. According to the stereotypes of that generation, I should live in my mom's basement. I should have a man bun. I should be up here wearing skinny jeans. Yeah, let that picture sink in for a minute. But the reality is, I don't have enough hair left for a man bun. The skinny jeans would not fit. And if I'm being really honest, my wife probably still dresses me every day. But I have to be real to who I am. I have to be authentic. I can't try to be someone else. I can't try and be Pastor Bruce up here with the leg kick. I'd probably just knock this over and make myself look like a fool. I have to be me. I have to be true to what God has created me to be in the middle of my context. The difference reality makes. So the Word became human and made his home among us. He was full of unfailing love and faithfulness. And we have seen his glory, the glory of the Father's one and only Son. John 1:14. Now I want to read this again, but from a different version, from the Message. It says this: the Word became flesh and blood. Hear this part. And moved into the neighborhood. We saw the glory with our own eyes, the one-of-a-kind glory, like Father, like Son, generous inside and out, true from start to finish. How does Jesus move into our neighborhoods? It's in you and I. Jesus came in reality. He took on human flesh. At Christmas, we often think of this beautiful nativity scene. This peaceful scene of wise men and shepherds all gathering around this peaceful baby. And yet somehow I don't think it was quite so peaceful that night in Bethlehem. See, Jesus came through the same birth canal that you and I came through. I don't think Mary was so peaceful and so quiet that night. I don't think Jesus didn't keep his mom up at night when he was hungry or when he pooped. I don't think he didn't drive his dad nuts when he had to get up for work and he wouldn't settle down. And Mary said, had enough and said, Joseph, it's your turn. You stay up with him. Jesus was real. And yet today he sits in the right hand of the Father, forever changed by his experience here on earth. Jesus came and became one of us. We proclaim to you the one who existed from the beginning, whom we have heard and seen. We saw him with our own eyes and touched him with our own hands. He is the word of life. An accessory aims at relevance. An essential embodies reality. I'm told that accessories are what set up an outfit. That the right handbag or tie or necklace is what completes the outfit and makes it pop. Now, I really don't know about any of that. But maybe like me, you have a truck. And I like my truck. I like that my truck has shiny rims and nice tires and a nice paint job. But the reality is, for it to be a truck, it could have the worst rims out there. It could be full of rust and have the worst paint job, and it could still function as a truck. But if I take out an essential component, if I take out the drive shaft, it doesn't matter what modifications I've made to the engine. It doesn't matter how expensive the rims are or what the custom paint job looks like. It's not going to work as a truck. It's not going to function. For Christians, Jesus embodies reality. Without him, nothing will happen. He's the key component. We can go to all the Bible studies. We can go to all the small group meetings. We can be here every Sunday and never actually become a Christian. Because those things, they're all just accessories to the Christian life. There's a reason why we're called Christians. We need Jesus to be Christians. We need the Christ in Christian. When life gets hard, we like to blame God and say he just doesn't understand. When the reality is that he absolutely understands because he actually became one of us. How Christmas guarantees Jesus' contextual reality. Right now we find ourselves in the midst of a traditional 4 weeks of Advent. And as I prepared for this, I kind of looked it up and said, what's Advent really all about? Where did it start? How did this begin? And it's a tradition that has gone back over 1,500 years. And for some, it meant a time of fasting and prayer. For some, a time of reflection. Now we often see it as a calendar with a chocolate every day. As a church, we light candles. So is this season of Advent an accessory, or is it an essential? I believe that as we open our hearts with expectancy and remembrance, as we remember what Christ did when he came to earth, and as we set ourselves in a posture of expectancy towards his second coming, that Christmas is not just a mere tradition. It is actually the foundation of our faith, that Christ has risen, that death could not hold him, that our faith is alive, and that one day we will see Jesus come back once more. Christmas is not about being culturally relevant. It's about the reality of Jesus. Jesus is the real deal, fully human. Because God's children are human beings made of flesh and blood, the Son also became flesh and blood. For only as a human being could he die, and only by dying could he break the power of the devil, who had the power of death. Only in this way could he set free all who have lived their lives as slaves to the fear of dying. We also know that the Son did not come to help angels. He came to help the descendants of Abraham. Therefore, it was necessary for him to be made in every respect like us, his brothers and sisters, so that he could be our merciful and faithful high priest before God. Then he could offer a sacrifice that would take away the sins of the people. Since he himself has gone through suffering and testing, he is able to help us when we are being tested. Real life. Jesus came and had real life. The Son also became flesh and blood. It was necessary for him to be made in every respect like us, his brothers and sisters. There was nothing inauthentic about Jesus' life. It was real in every way. Real pain. Jesus experienced real pain. Since he himself has gone through suffering and testing, Jesus didn't have it all put together. He didn't have it all figured out. Not everything was handed to him on a silver platter. He experienced real pain in his life. Real death. For only as a human being could he die, and only by dying could he break the power of the devil, who had the power of death. Then he could offer a sacrifice that would take away the sins of the people. God experienced these things not so he could say he was relevant, but so that we would know he was real. Jesus grasps our predicament. He feels our struggle. Only in this way could he set free all who have lived their lives as slaves to the fear of dying. We also know that the Son did not come to help angels. He came to help the descendants of Abraham. This high priest of ours understands our weaknesses, for he faced all of the same testings we do, yet he did not sin. You see, Jesus, he gets our fears. People are constantly looking for a purpose and significance in life. Because if you believe that this life is all there is, you want to accomplish something. You want it to have meant something. But I think if many people are honest, they're afraid of death because they're uncertain about what comes next. Every time I go to a funeral, I'm often lost to my thoughts about the people who are in the room who don't know Jesus. What fear must they be experiencing? The finality of the grave. What's that feel like without the hope of Jesus? And how do we share that with them? He gets our failures. I know some of you think as pastors we have it all together, that we are wonderful saints. And I'll let you think that. Just don't talk to my wife after the service and you'll continue to think that. But you see, God understands that we're not actually perfect. He faced the very same temptations, and he wants to help us have the strength to overcome them as he did. Jesus offers genuine support. God speaks our language. So then, since we have a great high priest who has entered heaven, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold firmly to what we believe. So let us come boldly to the throne of our gracious God. There we will receive his mercy, and we will find grace to help us when we need it the most. If you've ever traveled to a country where you don't speak the same language, you'll quickly get a different perspective on communication. When you go to a restaurant and you think you've clearly communicated your desire for a hamburger and fries, and out comes a plate of something that to this day you're still not quite sure what it was, you all of a sudden have a different perspective on what it means to communicate with someone else, what it means to speak the same language, and how we take that for granted. And I think we often have that perspective of God. We kind of hope that he gets us. We kind of hope that he gets what we're going through and what we're saying. But the reality is Jesus knows everything, all of our thoughts. He knows how many hairs are on our head. Jesus speaks the same language. We don't need to send smoke signals up to heaven and hope that he gets it. He knows our every thought. He understands everything we're going through. The priest speaks forgiveness that makes us bold. A couple of years ago, after I graduated from Liberty University, we went down for the ceremony, and we flew through Washington, and we took some time as a family to tour around the sites of Washington. And as we went through the memorials, my favorite was the Lincoln Memorial. As you sit on those steps looking out over the entire Washington area where all the monuments are, and you can see right to the Capitol, you get this sense of awe at the people that have gone before you, that have made a significant impact on our society. Abraham Lincoln is famously known for setting slaves free and was the victor in the Civil War. And yet he was also a president that was of the people, and he wanted to let the people have access to him. But because of that access, people were allowed into the White House almost whenever they wanted. And it became troublesome for him, and they ended up having to partition it off so that people would stay away so he could focus on the matters of the country and such a critical time during the Civil War. And after the war, in the week or so between the end of the war and when he is assassinated, there's a story about a Confederate soldier who went to see the president to try and get a matter resolved about his land in the South that had been taken from him. And as he tried to gain access to the White House, he was pushed back. The security guards wouldn't let him in. And he sat a little dejected outside of the White House, and he began to talk to this young man, and he shared his story. And the young man had compassion for him. He said, "You come with me." And so he walked him back towards the White House. And as they got close to the entrance, the security guards didn't stop them, but they opened the doors. He was ushered into the very room that the president was and was allowed to make his case to him. You see, that person he had shared the story with was the son of Abraham Lincoln. It was his son, Tad. See, Tad didn't have to go through security protocols to get to his father. he was allowed in. In Esther, we see a queen ask permission to speak boldly before the queen. You see, even as the queen, she didn't have full access to the king. She feared for her life and called the people to pray. But we don't need to have fear. We can go with boldness before God, knowing we have been redeemed through the shed blood of Jesus. As fully adopted sons and daughters, we can walk into that room, to the throne room with confidence. No security guard is going to stop us from getting to our Heavenly Father. We're sons and daughters of the King. The priest speaks grace that makes us free. Grace sets us free from the power of sin, free from slavery to the powers of this world. But yet it's easy to fall down. We still need grace. We find power in grace because it stops being about us and starts to be about the power of Christ working in us. So the question for all of us today is this: is Jesus an accessory or an essential in our life? Is he that critical component to what makes us function? Christmas seems to be getting more and more commercial. And to be honest, I love it. You might be thinking that's kind of odd. But you see, I kind of notice that people are a little kinder to each other, that we're a little friendlier to each other, that we even open up our homes to each other. We use Christmas as a reason to reconnect with the people around us. We need to make the most of this opportunity as a church to connect with other people that God has put in our lives. Let's take advantage of the fact that Christmas is commercial. It's giving us a platform to share our hope and truth that's in our hearts. Now, when I think of Christmas, one of the first things that pops into my head isn't the presents, and it's not even the turkey, although I love the turkey. For me, it's about the tree. And I think it's because we had this great tradition growing up of going to my grandparents' farm, and we'd wait for the family to get there, and we'd all go out into the woods, and we'd start to cut down a tree. Now, my grandpa was a very patient man, and he knew that we thought the best part of the tree was the top 6 feet of that tree. The problem was those trees were all about 35 feet tall. And so as little kids, we'd use an axe that we barely knew how to use, and he'd watch us as we cut down these trees. Then we'd compare which one was best, and ultimately we'd end up dragging a whole bunch of trees out of the forest. And we'd bring them out in front of the family home and put them out by the porch, and my grandma would put on her coat, and she'd come out and inspect them. Now, at this point, they were pretty Charlie Brown-like, right? Like, we dragged them through the forest. Like, this was not the nice Christmas tree you buy at the store. And she would make us feel all accomplished that we had brought these beautiful trees. And she'd find one, and we'd bring it inside, and we'd start to decorate it. And we'd all be allowed to put our favorite colors on, and Grandma loved tinsel, and so the tinsel would be on. And then once it was done, we'd all gather around, and someone would get to plug the tree in. And it was with this magical sense of awe that the tree would light up, and it would almost come to life, right? As the light reflects off the ornaments, and it colors the room with the different colors, the blues and the reds. Grandma wasn't too concerned about what the tree looked like as long as her grandkids were happy, and so we'd have lots of different colors that didn't match all over the room. And I loved it. It filled the room with this sense of awe and wonder. But if our faith is ornamental, it will never be transformational. I don't want to be an ornament that never reflects any of the light. I want the light of Jesus to bounce off of me and bounce the color of Jesus all over the room. You can't help but look at a Christmas tree when it's all lit up. It takes over the room. It takes over the space. The light shines everywhere. Let's be that way when we're with our friends and family. Let's be that way when with our neighbors. That the light of Jesus is bouncing off us in such a way that it's so bright that they can't help but look at us and see Jesus in us. You see, we need to go camping with friends and sit around a campfire. I love to camp. I don't need to go with all of you. I need to go with the people that God has put in my life. I need to sit around a campfire and not be afraid of what they might drink around the bonfire. I need to be there and be real in the context and be friends with them. And that as we do that, they're going to see Jesus in me. I don't need to bring judgment. I don't need to tell them what I think they should or shouldn't do. I just need to love them. I just need to have a genuine relationship with them and care about them as people, because that's what God's calling me to do. I get to be involved in hockey. I love it. I get to coach my kids. But I need Jesus to help me reflect who he is in those moments. Right? I don't want to be that coach that's screaming and yelling at the other coach and screaming at the referees every time a call doesn't go quite the right way. That's not Jesus at work in me. And I'm not perfect. I will admit, I've yelled at a referee before. But hopefully in the midst of that, there's been times where I've had to go to the referee after the game and apologize. Say, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have acted that way. I shouldn't have questioned you. We need to be real in the context that God has placed us. If you're a businessman, I hope that every time someone comes through the door of your business, that they see Jesus reflected in the way they're dealt with. That as you give them good customer service, that they see Jesus. No matter what it is we're doing, we need to reflect that light. The light isn't given for us to absorb it. It's given for us to reflect it. I have an amazing wife. I have been so blessed to do camp ministry with her. But one of the things that makes me most proud of my wife is how she loves our neighborhood. For years now, she's been making cookies for the kids that come home from the bus stop and no one's there. And they get a little snack because their mom and dad have to be at work or not there, not able to do that for them. And she just comes alongside them, gives them a little snack. And one of those families in the last little while has been struggling in their marriage, and so it's created this issue of childcare in the morning. And Becky's been very inconvenienced by this. The kids come to our house in the midst of her trying to get our 4 kids ready for the day. There's 3 more kids added to it. And she takes them to school and drops them off at different times and all the things that need to happen. And people have asked her, why is she doing this? Isn't it inconvenient? It absolutely is. But I promise you that what Jesus went through was far more inconvenient than what my wife goes through to show his love to these kids. We need to be real in the context that God has placed us. Whether that's at work or with our neighbors, how do we actually reflect God's love? We need to go out with them. We need to go out for wings. And I'm not telling you to go to places that you shouldn't go or places that would cause your marriage harm. That's not what I'm saying. But when you get the invitation to be a part of people's lives, don't let fear of sin stop you from saying yes. Go and be the light of the world in that place, in that moment. Accept the invitation. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you so much that we have the opportunity.
Pastor Martin would like to send you a copy of the book he gives to those he prays with at the close of every gathering. This book will help you discover an abundant life through a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. To request your copy of the Abundant Life New Testament, write to us, visit us online, or call us toll-free. Thank you for your faithful support. Please remember, it's your financial partnership that helps us present this program week by week.